Crawfordsville Mayor Time, episode 30, brought to you by Blue Marketing. I'm your host, as always, Chuck Granspatch, here with Mayor Barton.
Hello.
Director of Operations for the city, Dale Pietre.
Good morning.
And Director of Fusion 54, Jim Johnson.
Hello.
How are you all doing today?
Doing well. Doing well.
Yeah.
It's good to be here again.
Yes, it's always a pleasure to have everyone here together. We're recording a little early because of the long weekend, so
we're actually ahead of schedule on
yeah,
something.
right?
How about
exactly. So again, today we're just going to kind of do another COVID update and kind of talk about some general city topics that either we've talked about in the past, giving updates to, or some stuff that's probably gotten a little bit more direction now that we're about to jump into phase 3 tomorrow, which is exciting.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's just jump right in. If someone wants to give us the most up-to-date information about the community and the COVID-19 pandemic, that would be great.
Well, we're recording and it's Thursday, May 21st. So, these numbers change every day. But, as of right now, Montgomery County stands at 191 confirmed cases of COVID-19. And sadly, has recorded 14 deaths related to COVID-19. Those numbers will keep changing and those updates will be out every day. And we just encourage people, like we've said all along, to go to the sources, go to the health department's website, go to their social media, go to the city's social media and so on, to find those updates. Mm-hmm. And, they're out every day. I think the schedule has changed a little, that information's coming out, and Jim can correct me here, a little bit later in the day than it previously was, because we're getting the information from multiple sources, and we don't get some of that until mid to late morning. So it's more around noon, I think, that we're putting our information out every day. But
yeah, I've really enjoyed might be the wrong word, but like the breakdown, especially since the Ben-Hur problem, like having that included, it's been nice. You're
seeing more detail in that reporting, and that's good. And if there's something there or something that you don't see there that you have a question about, by all means, reach out to the health department and they'll try to help flush that piece out for you. But the reporting, both in terms of locally and statewide, has gotten a little more detailed. And mm-hmm. I know, for example, they recently have started putting out information about the breakdown of the deaths and their age range and age mm-hmm. groups, which is very interesting to look at as well. Instead of just looking at one big number and wondering what comprises that number. So we're moving forward there. As you mentioned, preparing to go into phase 3, and that's going to happen. It's been moved up by Governor Holcomb, so May 22nd, tomorrow, instead of May 24th. And again, if you're not clear on what phase 3 is, you can go online and read everything there.
I can give a quick update for thing. I have it up in front of me. So I'm just going to go quickly through this. Social gatherings can go from 25 to 100 people, and it's still recommended to keep social distancing.
And that's the key piece to that. We've heard that over and over. There's a little bit of confusion there. Say, well, we can have 100 people come together. You still need to maintain your mm-hmm. distance.
Restaurants can go from 50% capacity, or no, they stay at 50% capacity.
Yeah, I believe they stay at 50%.
In stage 4, they'll go to 75.
Right.
Retail can go from 50 to 75% capacity. Movie theaters will reopen, I'm assuming, if they want to reopen at 50% capacity. Things that are still closed are bars, nightclubs, sports events, entertainment, schools, which isn't really that big of an issue because it's summer break now.
Well, it is on the athletic side, we've
true.
seen some clear guidance there from IHSAA on how that's going to be handled.
Well, I saw the NCAA said that specific sports can start reconvening in June.
And it's been interesting here, as we reach the point where restaurants could reopen at 50% capacity, some of them have chosen not to, and that's a decision that each restaurant has to make on their own based on the layout of their facility and the economics involved, and there are a lot of different factors there. So, just look around to see what's happening and what is not open, and we just have to continue to adjust for a little while till we get through this.
And then gyms and fitness studios are going to start reopening with restrictions. And then community pools, campgrounds, and other recreational sports can start with restrictions as well. And then the big thing that I want to reiterate is that face masks are still recommended. And I would like to hope that the reason we could push up the time of phase 3 is because people are trying to follow that.
Yeah, Governor Holcomb made that point. I think that everyone's doing a good job. We're keeping the numbers in check, and we used to talk about flattening the curve, and clearly that curve has been flattened. The real measure here locally has been, not so much looking at the case numbers. Yes, that's important, but as testing dramatically increases, then you're going to see those case numbers go up. But to look at capacity in the healthcare system, and hospitalizations have declined, and we have a really good capacity in our healthcare system right now. So we're not even close to pushing that limit, and that really is a good measure to see how we're doing and how we're progressing with all of this.
The curve has been somewhat flattened.
And that being said, there's still obviously, as we've increased testing capacity, then that gives the health department the ability to be more surgical in how they approach this. So if they see hot spots, they're able to go in and really address it there in more of a targeted approach, if you will. We mentioned extended care facility, nursing homes, obviously. We right now have one factory in our community that has been identified as having a unusually high number of cases. The health department is there as we speak, doing testing and really working through to try to reduce the numbers within that facility, because we know if it's there, it's going to spread elsewhere. So they're really working through that as well. A very targeted approach, which I think is very good.
Well, and I was going to say we might not have the ability to talk about this, but the reason that the health department can take a more focused approach is because of the state taking over in some capacity the contact tracing.
That's helped, I think. Yeah. I don't want to speak on their behalf. I'm not sure about all the logistics of their operation, but obviously that was the goal of the state, was to reduce that burden on the local health departments, and it has to have reduced it somewhat. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know if we have the people here to talk about it, but I thought I'd bring it up. So with all that being said, we kind of talked about the things, that are reopening, and with the coming of phase 4, things will get even more normal. Why don't we talk about our local businesses, restaurants and just shops? And
as
stuff.
I mentioned, some have reopened. They're in various stages depending on their own individual situation. We continue to see, very interesting contrast in this community, in that the larger businesses, are moving, not really affected. Maybe their output is down somewhat. Some of them businesses actually up. So they're trying to balance out, workforce challenges with the pandemic, with an increased demand. And then you have the smaller businesses, some of which, have just been devastated by this because they've been closed and not been able to operate. So it really is a mixed bag. And our approach with local government is just try to help those needing help, and try to work through individually with each business what they need, because in this situation, it is absolutely not one size fits all. It is very different depending on what sector you're in and the size of your business.
Mm-hmm. And now would probably be a good time to bring Jim in here. What is Fusion doing to assist local businesses or the partners within, the building?
Right. So obviously the partners working together on just being available and trying to help get some of these needs met the best that we can. Of course, they just seem to be changing as everything else is changing. But our partners here and at Fusion, myself and the Chamber of Commerce and Crawfordsville Main Street and the Montgomery County Visitors Bureau, the Leadership Academy has even been in on helping us with some things, and the Volunteer 54. And Wabash College Center for Innovation, Business, and Entrepreneurship. And I can't leave out Cheryl Morphew with the City Economic Development. She's been a huge help in guiding some things on our end. And We've had some webinars that we've made available to some businesses as a group. We've been able to put that out. The chamber actually had developed a hub, kind of a resource hub, and we've all been able to contribute to that. And we just had one central point that people can go to. That's on the chamber website, and that's crawfordsvillechamber.org. Just at the top, just look for the tab that says the hub, and we try and keep that updated with some resources there. And again, the point of having it there is just one centralized location, but we're all contributing to that. Like I said, we had some webinars available. We had one on social media during COVID-19 pandemic. Really good information out of that, came out of that. And then working closely with the Indiana Small Business Development Center and Monty Henderson. He's the regional director of the Hoosier Heartland region, and he did a really interesting webinar on adding the costs and risks to adding services. So he actually developed an Excel spreadsheet where you can just plug in the numbers on to be able to estimate your cost of adding delivery and that type of thing. And then and I have that, so if anybody was already thinking about adding something to their business, you can get in touch with me, and I can get that sheet to you. It just makes it a little easier to figure out what your cost might be and what costs you might need to get in on the for example, the delivery side.
Yeah. And now more than ever, businesses trying to adapt to new circumstances. That's right. Probably really important.
Yeah, and we're trying to help them adapt. We're trying to be a resource for them to make it a little bit easier. Maybe they don't know what direction to go, and we can not necessarily guide them, but give them some resources where they can do what they need to do. We will have and I don't know when this is we don't have a date set for this just yet. So I would say stay tuned on our social media, Fusion 54, and of course it'll be on Chamber and Main Street and Visitors Bureau. But we will have Monty back in for another webinar on modifying your business plan. That seemed to be your business plan and your business model. That seemed to be kind of a need that we've noticed just from surveying and talking with some of our businesses in the area. And that's modifying your business model to get through COVID. But there's a lot that are wanting to, and I think this is just some foresight on their part. They realize that there's going to be a lot of things that aren't going to be the same when we come out of this. So there's a lot of modifying your business model for the long run, and making things work there. So we'll have a Monty in again to talk about how to do that, how to go through that process and modifying your business plan and your business model. So like I said, stay tuned to social media, because we'll have information about that webinar here coming up. Also working on compiling some guidance on e-commerce, and some people who may not know what e-commerce is. It's just basically a shopping cart on your website. Putting together some guidance on there where you can go to make that part of your business model and start generating some revenue. And that way, if you're not having the capacity of people coming through the doors, or not having people coming through the doors right now at all. And this is all a work in progress, what we're doing. I think it will be a work in progress, and it's just going to change as we go on and as we go on and as things change throughout this. For me, I think it's trying to figure out making the public health side of things and the economic side of things mesh in some way. And that's a hard one to kind of figure out. For me, I think it's e-commerce. There's a big piece of that right now. So we need to get some of that information out and available, and
certainly,
and be a resource to some businesses if they need help with that. Because the idea is we want to help them be able to start generating some revenue there. We will have also some information coming out here in the near future. Be getting actually with Monty from the Small Business Development Center, the Hoosier Heartland region. Getting with him today or tomorrow to talk about the next step in a program that we're working on together as a region, with some funding that we'll be getting from the CARES Act. So the Small Business Development Center, it's received a portion of the CARES Act from the SBA, and then that's, each region gets a little bit of that. So we're working together as a region. We have a group of us putting together basically how that funding will be spent, and a lot of that will be technical assistance and connecting businesses with some resources to get some of their needs met there, and then also just education and training. So there's some really cool things that's going to come out of that, and again, there'll be more information coming up here pretty soon. A lot of this we don't know what we don't know. So if there's needs that we're not addressing, then I'd encourage people to get in touch with me. My email address is jjohnson@crawfordsville-in.gov. Definitely want to make sure we're on the right track and doing the things that we need to do, and the things that we need to do is what the businesses need us to do. So if we're not going that direction, then definitely need people to get in touch with me so we can stay on top of it. Again, my email, it's jjohnson@crawfordsville-in.gov.
Well, and like you said, keep an eye out to social media,
Yep.
visit the website.
Mm-hmm.
Fusion is such a great thing for this community, and especially during a time like this, having those resources is so important.
Oh, yeah. And Fusion 54, on that note, that's the part of the big concept of it is entrepreneurship and our co-working studio, and I think the co-working studio, people working from home, maybe they start getting tired of working from home, they can come work at the co-working studio, or if they need some resources that they're not getting at home, or just that community that they're not getting at home, and they can come work at Fusion 54, and all that information about memberships is available on our website, fusion54.com. We did just have one of our offices open up, so if anyone is looking for just a single office, they can get in touch with me, and we can talk about that. I think we'll have another opening coming up here very soon. And there are some accelerator offices either in place or in the process of being in place around town, and so we can help. If they're not here, we can help connect them to one of those offices, and still have them part of our programming, and we can still help them develop and then also get through COVID here.
Yeah, it'd be a hard time to starting a business.
No, but a good time, and I think it shows. History has shown that a lot of businesses actually start during recessions, and it may not be right now. It might be later this year, or whenever, or at the beginning of next year. But I definitely wouldn't. You want to make sure you have your ducks in a row, but I wouldn't not start a business because we're in a recession, and obviously Fusion 54. When they're ready and they're to that point, we can help them through that. We can help them get some of their ducks in a row as well.
Awesome. That's a fantastic update, and really great efforts being done by Fusion 54. So jumping back to you, Mayor, do you want to give us an update on the loan assistance that the city has been giving to small businesses?
Sure, I'd be glad to. Just as a reminder, this was something that we created to help what we called small businesses, which were businesses here in the community with 50 or less employees. And this was really not designed to solve their problem, but to help them get through the really rough patch here. and we set a funding cap of $7,500 per business, and then really determined, we had a scoring system to determine how much they qualified for, and tried to create a fair system that measured their need and really our ability to help them. And like I said, the goal here was just to get them through this rough patch. So if we could help pay the rent for a month or two, or the business loan for a month or two, those kind of things to make sure they could make it through this. So to date, well, first let me note that we stopped taking applications earlier this week. So we have closed out the application process. We still have some requests in processing right now, but to date we've committed $268,200 to businesses. Now they've not all, gone through with that process. They've not all accepted that, but to date we have paid out $216,700 to 33 different small businesses here in the city of Crawfordsville.
That's awesome.
And that is awesome. And it's really been vital to their survival. And we've heard that over and over from these businesses that they really didn't know what they were going to do. Some of the restaurants, small restaurants, had told us, we were probably just going to have to close the doors for good and walk away. And we don't want that, especially don't want that in our downtown. So helping them survive this and get back on their feet is critically important, because when we emerge on the other side, we don't want all these vacant places, where we had strong, thriving businesses before. They just couldn't make it. And you're going to see that in a lot of communities. My goal is that you don't see that in Crawfordsville. So again, $216,700 paid out to 33 businesses thus far. That leaves about another about $51,500 left in commitments that's either in processing, or maybe in some cases they're not going to go through with it, which is fine. They've decided that they don't need to, or they found another source, something like that. So we're closing out on it, and we're nearing the end of it. But as businesses are starting to get back on their feet, I think it's putting them in a much better position than they would have been without this, for sure.
Get through the really rough time.
Definitely.
Now that we can see people gathering a little bit more, and, businesses allowing more people in, hopefully we've got them through that and we can all get back to going up. With all that being said, maybe now's a good time to pull in Dale here. During this whole pandemic, people in communities are suffering. What exactly is the fiscal impact that has been brought to this community and its operations due to the pandemic?
Well, it's really probably better for the mayor to answer, but
I'm curious what he's going to say.
He sees the tax side more than I do.
Yeah, as we've said before, just some uncertainty there. We have been told that property tax collections are on pace with where they're normally at, which is very interesting. Now, we fully expect that property tax collections will be down on this first installment when we get our first tax draw, if you will. We expect that. We are hopeful that and optimistic that is made up when we get the second tax draw later in the year. So, we're just trying to be careful. As I've said before, we're operating on budgets that were created a year ago based on the revenue projections that we had at the time. And, we understand that those revenue projections are probably going to be off. And in some cases, we know they're going to be off. So we're just stepping back and really being careful how we approach things and foregoing some of the capital items that were approved in the budgets because that revenue might not be there. So we'll have a much clearer picture, down the road here after we get that first tax draw, kind of know where we're at. But for example, much of our street repair money comes from the gasoline tax, and we know that's going to be impacted. There's no doubt about that. So we're going to have to rethink some things, but I think it's a short-term blip, and I've always said we're positioned very well financially, and now's when that really pays off because it allows us to be very stable, move through this, and not really drastically change things. But we're going to have to be aware and maybe put some things off for a little while until we get through it. We have been notified we are eligible for some funding under the CARES Act. Both the city and the county and even the small towns are eligible for that to recover any expenses we have associated with the pandemic. And in our case, those expenses are not real high. We have not incurred a great deal of expense responding to this. We're more concerned with the revenue side.
Yeah.
And the CARES Act at this point is not designed to replace the revenue. So so we're tracking every expense we have, and we'll be turning that in and getting reimbursed, which will help. There's no doubt about that. But it does not cover lost revenue. So we're in a little bit of a difficult situation there, and we don't know what that's going to be yet.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? You could. I mean, it won't happen. But.
Right. And then we're in the process right now. We're just beginning, and it seems like we just talked about this, but we're just beginning the budget process for 2021. So that'll start to play out in earnest here in the next couple of months.
If you think about it, it's crazy to think that we're about about to be in the 6th month of the year.
We are.
When that happened, I have no clue.
Yeah, we lost a couple of months in here. So so we'll be starting that budget process for next year. Again, taking a different look this year. But I've always said with our budgets, the key is really projecting the revenue. And Treasurer Terry Gadd has done a fantastic job of that year after year. And that's why our budgets are so solid, because we really know what we're going to have coming in. And we know for this next budget, that number's going to be down. I mean, there's no doubt about that. So we're going to have to rethink a couple of things. But that's why we've been so aggressive when we could. We've gotten a lot accomplished. We've repaired infrastructure. We've rebuilt things. We've done all these things. We've fixed our pay matrix with our employees. We've done all those things when we could, knowing that there would be some rough patches, and we're in one of those right now, and we'll get through it. I don't think it's going to be long term, but we're just going to have to be very diligent in how we move through this next year from a budgetary standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Well, another thing that we have talked about being so important due to, you've always said you don't want to make changes without allowing the public to be involved in those conversations. So public meetings, Board of Works, council meetings.
We started, we resumed Board of Works meetings, and we're doing those in the virtual format. It's been interesting. It's a learning curve. I think we're getting better at it each week. And if anybody wants to tune into those, that link for that virtual meeting is always published on the city's website. So, and those meetings are Wednesday mornings at 10 o'clock. And we're trying to just, work through the routine business in those meetings. There's nothing earth-shattering happening in those meetings. Just the things that need to happen. And so we're doing that virtually. That'll continue for a couple more weeks. And then June 15th is really the key day for city government. That's when we will open City Hall with social distancing, and that's when we will start having public meetings again. And we take off right out of the gate on June 15th. I know there's a utility board meeting, I think at 4 or 5 p.m. City Council will meet at 6 p.m. So they will not have their meetings the first 2 Mondays of June. It'll all be moved to the 15th, just to give us a little more time in there.
It's going to be jam-packed.
Yeah, so June 15th, 6 p.m., City Council meets, and they're going to meet in committee and the full council that night. I don't anticipate a big agenda that night. There are a couple of items that have been lingering out there that we need to kind of wrap up. And then I anticipate the heavier items will really start to appear then in July and August as we kind of really ramp up. We have to rethink our meetings a little bit as they start to happen again, just to incorporate social distancing. Because if you've ever been to one of those meetings, everybody kind of sits in a clump. So we're going to kind of have to spread things out, which means taking people out of their routine. So we'll have to think through a little bit of that.
Just get mannequins and put them in.
Maybe. I don't know. So we're going to have to rethink some things and move things around, but we'll make it work for sure.
And that being said, we had talked before about your community forums and trying to find a way to do that.
Yeah, I really like doing those. Committed to doing those when I ran, and I've stayed true to it until we hit the pandemic. I am kind of struggling with that a little bit. I'm shooting for maybe late July. No guarantees. We'll just see what's going on. Might have to move it to August. I don't know. We're closing in on that 100th one, so I'm kind of anxious to get going and make that happen. But I also know that if I look back at the community forums, a lot of the people who really enjoy coming to those are in the high risk categories, and I struggle with creating a situation that compels them to feel like they need to show up when it's probably not best for them to be there. So we'll see. I don't know. July or August, we'll get started with those again.
Let's get to that 100th one. Have a big
I'm
party.
looking forward to that. But I want to do it in a safe manner, and I'm not going to push it until I think it's safe to do so.
So before we get into some status updates on projects around town, do you want to give us some information about the Brownsfield grant from the EPA?
Right. It was recently announced that the city of Crawfordsville is receiving a grant from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to do brownfields assessment in our community, which a brownfield is a site that was a former industrial site and has some contamination issues. And those sites tend to just sit because no one wants to deal with the contamination issues, the environmental issues. And it just seems like they can just sit there for decades, and look bad. And everybody's wondering, are there bad things, happening to the environment from this site? And there's all these unknown questions. We have not a lot of those in our community, but we do have some of those that exist. And we've done a really good job at redeveloping the community, but there's those certain areas that have either a perceived environmental issue or a real environmental issue that just kind of linger, and they're really hard to move forward. What this grant will do is provide funding for assessments of those sites so that we can really get the facts, that go in and really understand what's happening there. And a lot of times when you get the facts in these cases, then you can really start to create solutions. You really can. And you find out that many times the actual problem is not as severe as what the unknown was. And you can find funding to get it cleaned up. And we just did that on the east side
I was going to say,
of the
is there any
Tri-County
example?
the Tri-County Petroleum site at John Street and Franklin Street. We obtained funding from the state on that case to clean it up. And the site's not totally clean yet, but the environmental piece has been cleaned up. There's still some structures there that we need to clear out and turn it into green space. But the key there is that the city has to get involved and a lot of times take deed to the property, and that's always been the reservation. Well, I'm not sure we want to do this, but if we don't, it never moves forward. And I'm confident that we've researched the legal side and we know where we stand in doing that, and we're okay in doing it. And cities across Indiana and across the country do that every day, and that's what it's going to take to move these forward. So we received that grant, and it's going to start assessing sites in Crawfordsville. I'm always asked, well, what sites? Well, I don't know exactly yet, but if you look around, you can see plenty of brownfield sites that just sit there, like old gas station sites, old factory sites, the power plant, obviously. There's environmental questions surrounding that site. So this will really allow us to come in and assess it and know what's going on with those. And we're very fortunate to get that grant. Dale is going to lead that as Director of Operations. So I don't know if he wants to add anything. I know he's already hard at work trying to sort it out and did a webinar, I think, this week, right?
Yeah, I attended a webinar on Tuesday that kind of got me up to speed on what's required by the EPA in order for us to continue with this grant. And the grant will actually start in October and run through September of 2023. So it's a fairly long-term grant, but it'll allow us to choose some properties. Right now we've identified possibly 5 properties, but part of this grant, like many federal opportunities, are that you get community input. And so we'll be holding some community meetings as we move along. Perhaps you know of something in your neighborhood or where you grew up or whatever that is a potential contaminated site that we've overlooked. So, those will come out early and we'll be able to take a look at those. So we're just in the initial stages. I'm developing a work plan that EPA then has to approve, and then we'll move into the full grant application process to actually get us the money. And that should occur sometime in August or September. And then we can start utilizing that in October.
It's a good time to kind of do this, because if you want to help develop the community, you identify these spots, get them cleaned up, and hopefully when we're on like Jim was talking about, it's not a bad time to start a business, even if it seems like it. Yeah. Having these spaces, new spaces to develop on, or who knows what.
Definitely.
Will be awesome.
Yeah. Well, and the nice thing also is these spaces are within the city limits, and so we're actually expanding the capacity of Crawfordsville to create housing, create another industrial opportunity without having to annex additional properties outside.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, existing areas, infrastructure's in place, but they just linger out there forever because people, they're afraid of the environmental.
Yeah.
And this will take the fear away, I think.
Awesome. So we did this a couple weeks ago, but why don't we kind of go through this quickly, giving status updates to some of the services and lingering questions that I'm sure that the community has. So we're just going to try to, go not as quickly as we can, but, maybe not linger. So let's start with trash collection. Where are we on that?
Let's talk trash.
Let's talk trash.
So trash collection is back on its regular schedule and regular parameters. As you recall, during the stay-at-home order, we had suspended the use of the trash stickers because Crawfordsville has a pay-as-you-throw model. So if you throw away trash, you pay, and if you don't, you don't pay. But it was difficult for people to get those stickers, so we suspended that. That's back on now. We're using the stickers again. It was interesting. While we didn't require stickers, our tonnage that we collected was more than double normal, which was to be expected. It has now come back in line with normal, so maybe slightly higher than normal, but pretty much normal. So we're back on track with trash collection. I have mentioned over and over that from a financial standpoint, we're going to have to make some decisions about trash collection, and we're working on that right now behind the scenes, gathering information. And we don't have a proposal yet how we're going to move forward. But I think there's some general ideas, and we'll be having that conversation with the city council in the coming months. But for now, everything's back to normal on trash.
Well, okay. And the next thing we're going to give an update on is the pool.
Yeah.
I've seen people be like, how can you social distance in the pool? I'm thinking I'd never want to be near people when I'm in a pool. But I know, the snack bar and stuff like that.
So we had originally in our rollout of our plan for reopening, we had identified that we would open the pool basically Memorial Day weekend as normal. And we've since, Fawn Johnson, the parks director, has done a lot of research and spent time on the phone with other communities with pools. She came to me and said, look, I think that's pushing it. I think I pushed it a little too soon there. So we're going to move that back, and they're going to open the pool on June the 14th is when we're going to open the pool. So we pushed it back several weeks there. Again, the social distancing will still be in place, but with the parameters loosen up a little bit at that time. So we're going to lose a little bit of time there with the pool, but June 14th is the target date. Now, looking at the weather forecast for Memorial Day weekend, I'm not sure anybody would have been wanting to go to the pool anyway, so we probably didn't. And the first part of the season is always kind of slow. So
yeah, we're getting all that April weather now here in late May.
Yeah, so the pool is June 14th.
And if I remember correctly, that would line up right around when recreational sports.
It does,
game.
yeah.
So that makes sense.
It's kind of right around the same time. And there's, if you look at the state's rollout of the reopening plan, that all sounds really simple, but there's always a million questions and a lot of gray areas. And where does a pool really fit? How do you do this? And, a lot that, unless you've ran a pool, you don't think about, so I didn't think about some of these questions, but Fawn immediately said, well, hey, what about this? And then when she talked to other cities with pools, they had questions. So it's a lot more complicated than you
better
think.
safe than sorry.
That's the goal. Yeah, that's the goal.
So jumping to, Pike Place, the farmers market, I'm really looking forward to hopefully someday getting back there.
Yeah, everybody's looking forward to the farmers market. So June 6th, Saturday, June 6th, we should see the farmers market reopen. The market master and everybody involved has done a really good job of thinking that through and creating a plan how they're going to do that. There will be some changes. It will look a little different this year, but we'll do all right. We'll get through it. So that starts on Saturday, June 6th, and then after July 4th, we can start having events at Pike Place. So if you recall last summer, the concerts and everything, I don't have that schedule in front of me. I know there are tentatively some events planned, but social distancing will still be in play when those happen. But it will be nice to get back to using Pike Place for sure.
Yeah, it's one of the best additions to the city that we've had in a long time, in my opinion. So, and now to 4th of July, I know that's kind of the end date, which is kind of ironic to me that all of this is going to be lifted
still
on the 4th of July. If
still have social distancing, so you can have much larger groups then. Yeah, the fireworks are still on for the 4th of July in Milligan Park. We've come to that conclusion. We're going to be able to do it there and do it safely.
I really want to know what that backup plan was.
Maybe we'll talk about it at some point. Yeah, so fireworks July 4th. I don't think I can say about the Freedom Festival yet. There's still some things to think about there. Whether we'll have food vendors and entertainment in the park. I don't know the answer to that yet. But the fireworks are definitely a go for July 4th. And again, everybody keep your social distancing going. So
just watch your car.
If you look at the fireworks, people tend to pretty much spread out. I mean, everybody has their spot, whether it's on Elmore Street or the golf course or 150 South or, South Boulevard. People are really spread out for that. So we'll be able to make that work.
I feel like people social distance without them. When you're told to social distance,
Right.
I don't want to, but
Right.
when you're not told, you don't realize how often you're actually doing it. The downtown trail is, construction is going strong on that.
Yeah, I'll turn that over to Dale. He's dealing with that every day.
Yes, every day. Well, not every day because it rains most days now. And so if you'd have asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have told you that it's going to be finished by the end of this month. And then we've had 2 weeks of pretty much solid rain. So it's going to move into June before it's really completed. But as soon as we get 3 or 4 days of sunshine, you'll see amazing changes, particularly with sidewalks. They'll start pouring all the sidewalks, and then it starts to look like a finished product. So got a few statistics. The trail's about half mile long, and it's funded through NDOT. We will add 26 trees to be replaced along the trail. Maples, fruitless sweet gum, black tupelos, silver lindens, and lacebook elms. And those were chosen primarily because of the fall colors. All of those trees will have outstanding fall colors. So it should be very attractive year-round, actually, or at least 3 seasons. They have decorative pavers at the corners at Walnut and Wabash and Grant, and also Main and Walnut. So there will be a decorative paver design that has downtown historic Crawfordsville etched in it. And that's one of the hang-ups is the pavers, which fortunately go in last. But there are 4 different colors to the pavers. And one of those colors came in about a ½ inch too thin. So without wanting to have a definite textural pattern to the paver design, we had to reorder those. And so that's going to be the end. Yes. Yeah, it's going to be the end of June before those come in. There'll be some parking bump outs that make it easier to park in front of Arnie's on Wabash and also the Pentecostal Church on Walnut and Pike. Let's see, there'll be trash receptacles and benches along the trail. CEL&P is putting in all new LED street lights. So if you go down Grant at night, you just see a tremendous difference. I say we can play night baseball on Grant now. So and that's been very good. And the other hang-ups have been some working around older infrastructure, particularly on Walnut. The water line that goes down Walnut's a pretty old line, and every time you get close to it, it starts leaking, and you got to fix that. So had some interesting things, and we found some infrastructure that no one knew was there that's been not used for a long, long time, but the pipes and things are still underground, and you have to investigate why those are there and if those are live or not. So it's been a good project. I think people's now that people see Grant pretty much finished, it'll be nice to get that repaved. I think later on this summer, or early fall. So that'll really pop up. And it was the plus side to the entire pandemic situation is that there hasn't been a lot of traffic, there hasn't been a lot of foot traffic, and so the construction people are able to really do their thing without a lot of interference and having to, every night make sure everything's blocked off and that kind of thing. So,
well,
it's going well.
Yeah, you mentioned paving. The pavement for 2019 is done. Looks beautiful. I drive on Pike every day to
just
loop
a few
around
months
the corner.
behind, but we're done with
Looks
2019.
good.
So I told everybody we would get it and we would get it completed, and we finally did. So we're glad to get that out of the way. Now we look at the 2020 schedule, and I know Street Commissioner Scott Hessler is working on that schedule right now, and hopefully we'll have that ready to release pretty soon to the public. But keep in mind, the really big project in 2020 is going to be a complete rebuild of East Wabash Avenue, really in that area of Oak Street. It's really bad from Mill Street out to about that rail line right there. And we've repaved it over and over, but the sub base is just gone. So we just need to tear it out and rebuild it. There are big drainage problems. Anytime there's heavy rain, you drive through there's water everywhere and signs that say high water. That'll all be addressed in this project.
Is that caused from the trucks going down there in the past? And
it's a combination of
things. Am I thinking
things.
The wrong area?
Yeah, it's a combination of things, and the infrastructure there is just worn out. That's the bottom line. We just got to go in and replace it. So that's going to happen. I don't have the timeline on that. I probably will have it by our next episode, but it's going to be inconvenient. Okay, I'm not going to mislead anybody. To have East Wabash closed in that area is going to be unpleasant at times. We are working on a traffic plan that will really change things up, but I think will really give us the flexibility to still move traffic through there. The original plan was to close one side at a time and have one lane through there. The decision now has been, let's just close it all, get in there, do it, move traffic around it, and be done, instead of dragging this out any longer than we have to. So we'll have things to say about that pretty soon, but just know that's coming. And if you drive that stretch very much at all, you understand the need.
That'll be nice.
Yeah, you understand the need for what's happening. And think back to when we rebuilt West Main Street a few years ago. It was very inconvenient, but really paid off in the end. So that's what we're doing there.
I was thinking of the other side of Wabash. My bad. And lastly, Memorial Day is on Monday.
Right.
I know there's some sort of ceremony.
Yeah. So there's a ceremony every year, and the question was, is that going to happen this year? And consulted with the folks from the American Legion Post, and the decision was that let's move forward with that with social distancing. Very, very important to pause and honor the sacrifice of those who've given their lives so that we can enjoy the freedoms that we have. So that'll take place on Memorial Day on Monday. That's at 11 a.m. at Oak Hill Cemetery North. And there's a monument there. It always happens in the same place. I always say we encourage everybody to come. That's a little different this year, but we still encourage you to come. And there's plenty of room there, plenty of room for people to space themselves and spread out. Everyone's very dedicated to that, and it would just be nice to see more of the community show up and really show their support. So again, that's on Memorial Day at 11 a.m. at Oak Hill Cemetery North.
Well, it's awesome that we can still try to hold some sort of, normalcy on a very important day to remember.
And both the American Legion Post here in Crawfordsville and the VFW Post put a lot of effort into that to make sure it's done very well. So really appreciate that.
Well, if anybody got anything else they want to add, it's been a very in-depth podcast. We covered a lot of topics today.
We did, and my hope is that, and I've said this a couple of times now, but we'll kind of get back into a normal routine with the podcast and start diving into some regular topics, if you will. So
some non-COVID related topics.
It's really tough when I think about today to find things that aren't affected by the pandemic, because basically everything we do is affected by the pandemic in some way.
And things change so frequently. We record every other week, so giving an update in between those is important.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining me today. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a great weekend.
Yeah, and just remember to stay distant and stay safe. Have a good weekend.